Hello everyone, welcome back to Code Dev Academy. In this channel, we'll bring you tips, tutorials and insights on web development. We're going to dive into a step-by-step process on how to create a login form using just HTML and CSS. We're going to go through each process that is required to make this done. And I'm going to make sure I explain each process. So even though you're a beginner to web development or you're already into web development, this video is for you. But before we start, I'm going to show you all the things we need to get this done. We have our HTML file here, and we also have our CSS file. And apart from that, we also have a different folder which I named it to be images. And these images, I have an image inside which I named it to be tall buildings. And I'm going to use this image to be my background image for my login form. So if you're ready to level up your skills, let's get started. So as you can see, I have my HTML file to be on the left side of my screen and my CSS to be at the right side of my screen. For my HTML here, I have a title of login form and I linked the HTML file to my CSS file. This is all I'm having. And for my CSS here, I have margin to be 0 and padding to be 0. And I made a box sizing to be border box and my font family to be system UI. This is all I'm having. There's nothing serious in it. The coding hasn't started. So the first thing we're going to do is to head to our body here and create a div with a class name of main, which I'm going to write dot main, which I'm going to click on enter, and it's going to generate a div with a class name of main for me. Within this main, I'm going to create my form, which I'm going to write form, enter, and it's going to generate a div with a class name of form for me. And this my form is going to contain everything, my buttons, my input, my text, everything is going to be within this my form tag. So what I'm going to do now is, first I'm going to create a h1 and I'm going to write a login here just like this. This is the first thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to create a different div, which this my div is going to contain my inputs, my username input and my password input. So first I'm going to write input, which is the name of the box of the div. I'm going to write input box. I'm going to press enter, and within this my input box, this is where I'm going to insert my input username. But before that, so I'm going to say label, and within this my label here, I'm going to write username just like this, and I'm going to come down and I'm going to put my inputs, enter, and now I'm going to leave this to be on text. This is the first thing I have here. So let me show you in my browser. This is what I'm having. I have no CSS here, so I'm going to come back and start styling. So I'm going to head to my CSS. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to target my main dot. I'm going to write main. I'm going to give my main, I'm going to give it a width, I'm going to give it a height. So the first thing I'm going to say width to be 100%. This is the first thing, and I'm going to say height to be 100 VH. That is all I have. Then I'm going to give it a background. I wanted to give it a background color, but I just changed my mind. I'm going to give it a linear gradient. When you use a linear gradient, this is where you want to insert two colors in one page. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. So I'm going to say linear gradient and I'm going to say white. Then whenever you're using linear gradient, make sure that after the first color you put comma just like this. Then you can insert the second color. You can insert the third color, then you put comma. It keeps going till the number of colors you want to put. But in this case, I'm just going to put two colors, white and gray. And that's all. After giving that, I'm going to have a white and a kind of gray on my page. So that's the first thing. Then I'm going to save and I'm going to head my browser. If you look at it, this is what I'm having. I'm having a white color at the top and a gray color at the bottom. So I'm going to come back. Now I'm going to target my form. I'm going to write dot form. Then first thing, I'm going to give my form a width, which is going to be 350 pixel of weight, and I'm going to give it a padding, which is going to be 10 pixel top and bottom and 25 pixel left and right. So after giving it padding of 10 pixel top and bottom and 25 pixel left and right, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to give it a background image. So I'm going to say background, and I'm going to say URL, enter. Then I'm going to, if you remember, I have a folder called images, so I'm going to go into my images folder just like this, and now it's showing me the image that's inside that folder, which is tall buildings, as you can see. So I'm going to click on enter. But because I'm a lazy developer, I can actually just come down and say background repeat of no repeat. But in this case, since I have a shortcut, just before the closing tag, I'm going to write no repeat here. The essence of this is because in some cases, you're going to have an image repeating itself multiple times. So the moment you insert this no repeat, the image is going to repeat only once. So that's the essence of it. So I'm going to say background size. For the background size, I will just make it to be cover, meaning to cover the size of my form. Now I'm going to say background position. The background position determines where you want the center focus of your image to be. But in this case, I want to send the center focus to be on the center of the image. So I'm going to say background position to be center. Now, by the time I save and I show you my output, this is what I'm having here. But I want this my form to be at the center of this my page, somewhere around here. So I'm going to come back here. Because this my form is inside my main div, as you can see here, my main div is the parent container and my form is the child element. So that means my main div has full control over my form. So it determines where it wants the form to be. So I'm going to say, come to my main div and say display grid. If you don't know much about grid, just comment it down below and I will make a video on it. I haven't actually made a video on grid, but I have made one on Flexbox. So if you're interested in knowing how display grid works, just comment it down below and I will make a video on it. So I'm going to say display grid. Then I'm going to say place item. And I'm going to say place items to be center, meaning I want the login form to be at the center of my page. Then I'm going to say center. Now it should be at the center of my page now. As you can see, this is actually what we're having here. But my background image here, it's light and I want to be having a little bit of dark layer on it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to my image here. Just before it, I'm going to say linear gradient. So I'm going to use a different type of color to put a little bit of dark layer on the image because it's so bright right now. Black to be the first color, comma, and black also to be the second color. But by the time I save, if I leave it like this, it's going to be black, a whole black, and it's going to cover my background. But I don't want it to cover my background, so I'm going to make it to be a little bit transparent. So I'm going to let's say 0.6, something like this. I made it to be 0.6, and for the second one, I'm also going to drop the opacity to be, let's say, 0.7. Yeah. So now after adding this dark layer to our form, let's head to the browser and see our output. Now, as you can see, this is what we're having. Our background is there, but it's having a little bit of dark layer on it. And that's because of linear gradient that we use. We use two black colors and we drop the opacity. That's the reason we're having this kind of dark image. So let me go back to my HTML and add some things. So I'm back in my HTML here. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to copy this my input box. This my first box, just like this. I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to go just below it and paste it. For this my second div, the reason I'm pasting it is because the first one is going to be my username and the second input is going to be for my password. That's the reason I copied and I pasted it again. So I'm going to change this username, the first one, I'm going to change it to password. And I'm going to come to this type also and change it to password also. password, just like this, and I'm going to save. So after it, I'm going to come below it, then create another div. I'm going to name this div to be info. Press enter to create a div with a class name of info. Within this info, I'm going to create a paragraph. The first paragraph is don't have an account. Don't have an account. That's the first paragraph. Then the second one is going to be a link. So the link is going to be create new account. Just like this, and that's all we're going to need for our HTML. So we're going to head back to our CSS and start the styling. So after this form, I'm going to come below it and target my H1, which this is my H1. Let me show you my HTML. This is actually my H1. This H1 login. So I'm going to come here and say dot form. Then I'm going to target my H1. So the first thing I'm going to do for my H1, I'm going to change the color. The color is going to be white. After changing the color to be white, I'm going to change the font size because I want the font size to be a little bit big. So I'm going to make it to be 1.3 rem. Then I will make a padding. For the padding, I'm going to make it 7 pixel top and bottom and 10 pixel left and right. I'm going to come down and give a space from top, which is going to be margin top, and I'm going to make it to be 20 pixel. So it's going to be 20 pixel space from the bottom, from the top. So I'm going to give margin also from the bottom also, and I'm going to make it to be 10 pixel. So after having this, let me save and let me show you what we're working on. So this is actually what we're having. As you can see, our H1 is having a white color with login. So now I want to make this H1 to come somewhere around here to be in the center of the form. So I'm going to use one CSS property. So I'm going to say text align, and I'm going to say center. Just like this, with this property is going to center my H1 to this middle of the form. So after having that, I'm going to say background color. Background color, so I'm going to say black. But I don't want it to be complete black, so I'm going to drop the opacity to make it a little bit transparent. So I'm going to make it to be at least, let's say 0.3, somewhere around here. Yeah, let me just 0.3, somewhere around here. So let me leave it like this. And apart from that, I'm going to come down also and give it a border radius so that the edges will not be sharp. They should be a little bit curved. So I'm going to say border radius, for the radius 8 pixel. And I believe that's all for my H1. So let me save and let's see what we're working on. So this is actually what we're having here for the H1. As you can see, it's having a transparent background and it is centered. So I'm going to come back here to my CSS also. Then now I'm going to style my input box. This is my input box, which is having my username and also password. And it also contains my inputs, my two inputs, both for username and for password. So I'm going to say now dot form. Then I'm going to say dot input box. So what I'm going to do for the input box is I want to give space to be between the two inputs, which is my username and my password. So because they are having the same class name, as you can see, the username is also having input box, the password is also having input box. So if I give the styling to one, it's going to affect both of them. So I'm going to say margin top. I'm going to make it to be 30 pixel. So now there's going to be 30 pixel space between both of them from the top. that's all I'm going to do for the input box. Then I'm going to target the input itself, which is this actually, the input itself, which is having input with type password and input with type text. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to come below it and put dot input box. Then I'm going to say input. Now the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to give it a weight, and for the weight I want it to be 100%. Then I'm going to give it a padding, and for the padding I'm going to make it 5 pixel top and bottom and 0 left and right. Then I'm going to come down and give it a border radius because I want the edges to be a little bit curved. So I'm going to give it a border radius of 5 pixel. After having the border radius to be 5 pixel, I'm going to make the border to be none. So I'm going to say border. I'm going to make it to be none because I don't want the borders to be appearing. I don't want any border. And when I hover on it, there's going to be an outline appearing, and I also want it to be none. So I'm going to say outline also none. That's another thing. Then for the font, I'm going to make the color to be white. The color is going to be white. That means the text, when I'm typing, the color of the text that is going to appear, I want the color to be white. So then after that, I'm going to make it the font size. When I'm typing, how big will the size of the font be? Which I'm going to make it to be 0.7 remba. Then I'm going to say font size. Now the font size is 0.7 rem, which I'm going to make the font weight to be bold, which I like using my font to be bold. Then after that, I'm going to make a background color to be transparent. But before that, let me even show you what we're doing. As you can see here, this is what we're having, but the outline here is showing. But don't worry, everything is going to change. This is our result that we're having. But let me go back. Then I'm going to say background color, which is going to be transparent. So now the background color is transparent. So, but I want the bottom border to appear only. So I'm going to say border. I can say border bottom and give it a 1 pixel solid gray. But in this case, I can just say border block. I can say border block end. Border block end, which is going to be the bottom of my border. Border block start, which is going to be the top border of my input. But in this case, I'm going to say border block end. And I'm going to say 1 pixel. 1 pixel solid white. And now to show you what we have, this is actually what we're having here. So I'm going to take this off. So now I'm going to target my label, which is, this is my label right here. And within this my label here, I have a username and I have an input. First, I'm going to say form. Then I'm going to say label. Then I'm going to style my label. And this my username right here is my label. So I'm going to say form. Then target my label. Then the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to give it a font size. I'm going to give it a font size, and for the font size is going to be 1 rem. Then after that, I'm going to give it a font weight. The font weight is going to be bold as usual. Then I'm going to give it a color, and the color is going to be white. Then I'm going to give it a margin space from the button. So I'm going to say margin. Then I'm going to make it to be 10 pixel. I believe that's all I have for my username, for my label. After styling this my label, let's see what our output. This is actually what we're having here. As you can see here, the form is actually coming out. So this is what we're having. So now I have my login here. I have my 2 inputs. Then what I'm going to do now is to create a button. So I'm going to go back to my HTML. After going back to my HTML, so I'm going to create a button just like this, and I'm going to create a link here. Then for this my button, I'm going to say join. That's what I have. Then after that, I'm going to create a different div, which I'm going to write info. I'm going to call it info. And within this my div, I'm going to create first a paragraph. And for this one, it's going to be don't have an account. The first one is don't have an account, and the second one is going to be a link, which is going to be create an account, create new account. And that is all I have. So I'm going to head here and I'm going to start styling my button. I'm going to target my button here. So the first thing I'm going to do for my button, I'm going to say form. Then I'm going to target my button. So the first style I'm going to give for my button is a weight, because I want it to consume 100% of my form. So I'm going to say 100%, which is going to be my weight. My weight is going to be 100%, and I'm going to give it a padding. I don't normally give my buttons height because of when it comes to responsive stuffs. That's why I normally give it padding. So I'm going to say padding 13 pixel top and bottom, and 0 left and right. And let's see what we're having here. Now this is my button here, as you can see. Then let's continue styling it. Then I'm going to give it a margin from the top, because as you can see, it was stacking through to my input. So I'm going to say margin to the top, which I'm going to give it to be 10 pixel. And I'm going to say border radius, because I want the edges to be a little bit curved. For the border radius, I'm also going to say 10 pixel. And after that, I'm going to give it a cursor to be pointer. That's all. And I want, when I hover, I want the opacity to drop. So I'm just going to copy this. Instead of copying, I can actually even type it. I'm going to say form, and I'm going to say button. Then I'm going to write hover. Then I'm going to see when you hover, I want the opacity to drop to, let's make it to be 0.7. Let's say 0.7. And let's see how it looks. So when I hover, I'm having the opacity to be dropping to 0.7. So now I'm going to target my text, which is text that is on my button, which is this join. So I'm going to say form. I can actually just say button, which I'm going to say the font size to be 1.2 rem. The font size to be 1.2 rem, and the font weight is going to be bold as usual. And after making it to be bold, because it's a link, it has some underline. It has some underlining with it, as you can see. It has an underline. So I'm going to say text decoration none. Make it in text decoration to be none. After making it to be none, I'm going to say color to be black. After making the color to be black, I'm going to give it a font style. And I'm going to make it to be Arial. And I'm going to give a letter spacing, which I'm going to make it to be 2 pixels. And that's it, what I have for my login form. As you can see, this is what I'm having here. For the font size, it seems I'm going to reduce it to 0.1. And let's see how it looks. Now it looks a little bit. So now for the dropping of the opacity, let's make it to be 0.8, 0.9, and let's see how it's going to make. Yeah, it's a little bit good, better like this. So now what I'm going to do now is to target my info, which is this my div that I gave it a paragraph and a link. So I'm going to write info then I'm going to say a text align to be center. That's the first thing. Then I'm going to target my first paragraph, which is don't have an account. So this is this. I'm going to write .info. Then I'm going to say paragraph. So the first I'm going to give for this my paragraph, I'm going to give it a font size. For the font size is going to be 0.8 rem. Then I'm going to give it a margin top, which is going to be 10 pixels. Then after that, I'm going to target my link, which is create a new account. So I'm going to say .info. I'm going to say a. Then the first thing I'm going to give it a font size also. After giving it a font size of 0.8 rem, yeah, I think I should give it a 0.8 rem. So I'm going to say 0.8 rem. Then I'm going to give it a color, which is going to be red. Then I'm going to give it a cursor to be pointer, or no need of doing that because it's already a link. So let's check what we have. Now this is what we're having. We're having don't create an account with a black color and create a new account. So I'm going to go back here. For the P, I'm going to give it a color. I'm going to make it to be white, color of white. And I think I have there isn't a T here, so I'm going to just put this T and let's check what we have here. Now this is actually what we're having here, and I'm going to come back to my info and give it a margin from the bottom, margin bottom, and I'm going to make it to be 30 pixels. Now this is actually what we have here. I'm having this my box, but it's a little bit so close to my username, and this is so high, so I'm going to like reduce the height of it and bring it a little bit down. So I'm going to head to my, where is it, label. It's label. Okay, yeah. So margin bottom, I'm going to make it to be 5. Or let's just make it to be 1. So if you notice, when I'm clicking on this my button here, and it's showing a little bit of black color, which is my border. So I'm going to come back here and give it an outline of none, and also give it a border to be none. So when I save and I head back, now I'm having a complete different experience right now. Now our login form is 95 completed. There are 2 things that is left: to give our form a border radius and to insert transform scale. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to head back to my form. First, I'm going to give it a border radius, a border radius of 8 pixels, and I'm going to say transition should be ease 1000 milliseconds. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say form. After the form, I'm going to say hover. So when you hover on it, I want transform scale, and I want it to be 1.1. So by the time I save, let's show you what we're having here. So just before, let me make the cursor to be pointer. So by the time I save, now by the time I hover, I'm having this kind of pop-up image that is happening. The login form is popping up, and my border radius is curved with 8 pixels. So now that's all for this login form, and I hope this video is helpful. Please, if it is, please don't forget to comment your experience down below, and if you like this video, please don't forget to like it. And if you want to join us in exploring the world of web development, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much for your time. See you in my next video.